Hello everybody and welcome back to day 2 of our JavaScript challenge. And in this challenge what we are going to do is we are going to develop a dynamic color palette generator. What we are going to be focusing on is we are going to focus on how we can manipulate the DOM to create HTML elements, as well as how to use for loops in order to get what we want. And of course we are going to add an event listener to change our colors over here. What we are going to focus on in this one is we are going to focus on how, if we click here, we change the background color, as well as we get a print of what the color is, all right, the hex code color. So this should be fun. Thank you very much for joining us today, well, joining me today, and let us get started. First things first, let's delete our JavaScript over here. And what I always like to do in JavaScript, well, when thinking about it, it's really helped me a lot, is really thinking about what you want to happen. So you break down your JavaScript into small little bits. So firstly, what do we want to happen on this challenge? Just for visual purposes, I'm going to put our boxes over here using HTML. Later, we are going to develop that using just JavaScript. So what we want to happen, right, is we want a color in this box, right? We want to generate colors to come in these boxes. So that is our first step. So how we are going to do that is we'll create a function, and we'll call this function generate, generate random color, all right? And what we want to do then is we've got to have something where we can create the random hex code numbers. So first things what we're going to do is we're going to define our hex code, and we are going to save it in a string. Now a hex code can be any number between 0 and 9, and it can be any letter from A to F. So we'll store all of that in a string where we will access it later on in our lesson. So these 16 digits are stored in a string called hex code. From there, we need a place where we can save our number. So that place, we'll create a let variable, and we'll call it our color. And in there, we'll start by adding a hashtag, because we know all hex codes, as we could see earlier, start with a hash. Right, so now we've got a place where we can save our hex code, and we also have all the digits that we would need to create our hex code. Now we know that hex codes only has 6 digits. So how we will random, and of course we want our color to be chosen randomly. So how we would do that is we would create a for loop that is going to go into our hex code and grab 6 digits randomly. And what we will do is we want to start our loop at 0. So we want to let I equal 0. And when I is less than 6, right, because we want 6 digits, we want our loop to continue. As soon as I is not less than 6, what will then happen is our loop will finish. Okay, so what we are going to put in here in our loop is we want our color, and we also want to access our hex code. We want to save them together. So we'll create an array, and we'll use a function, a built-in JavaScript function called math.floor. And what this does is basically rounds a number up or down. And in there, because we're choosing a random number, we'll also use math.random, which generates a number between 1 and 0. But of course, we wanted to go through our whole hex code. So we'll times that by 16, so that it's got access to all of the digits in our hex code. And how the loop works is it will randomly take 6 digits from our hex code and put it into our color variable as we've added it together. So just so we have a visual representation of that, I'll console.log our color, and we'll also have to return our color because we are going to use it later on in our project. And just for now, we will call our function generate random color just so we can see our console.log. If we inspect the element and we have a look at our console, we can see that our random color was created. So what happened is our loop went into this hex code 6 times, getting a digit 6 times until it reached number 6, and then the loop stopped. And that generated our random color. So next thing, what we are going to want to do, because we are using JavaScript to create our box, we are manipulating the DOM. We'll create another function, and this function we can call create box. All right, because we want to create our box in JavaScript, and we'll have to store our box somewhere. So let's create a variable called box, and because we are manipulating our HTML document, we go document.create element, right? Because that's exactly what we are doing, and we are going to create a div element. This creates our box. Next thing, we are going to need a way to style this box. So what we can do is we can say box.classList. Now this adds a class. This allows us to edit the style of our box, and we've already done it here. We've given it a class of color box, where we used our CSS to style the box. And as well, what do we want done? So inside our box, we want our color that is generated here. So we wanted our random generated color to come inside our box. So how we'll do that is we'll say box.style, because we are changing the style of the box, and we are going to say background color, and we'll set our background color to the color of our random generated color. So what we would have to do here in our create box is we also need to pass through our color in order to access that. Right, so now our box is created, it's got its color, it is perfect. So from there, we saw in the preview of the video, when we click the box, we change the background color as well as get the hex code written over here in the same color as the generated random color. So how we would do that is we would add another event listener. So we say box.add event listener, and what are we listening for? We are listening for a click. On that click, what we want to happen is we want our HTML background, right? The whole body, background color, so we say body.style because we're changing the style of it. Background color, and we want it to be the same color as our box. Right, so that's how that function would work. And what we also want is we want to generate that code over here. So what I did is I created it. I created a div called ID hex code write. All right, so how we'll access that is we'll create a variable const. I can call it hex code write, just as it was there. And what we want to do is we want to get that element. So we say get element by ID. And what is it called? It's called hex code write on our HTML. So now we've given access to that, and we can change it. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to be able to change our HTML document. So what we can do is we can take our hex code write, and we will add something called inner HTML. Okay, and we'll set it, because what we want written when the button is clicked is we want to write this generated random color of what the box is. So then we can say hex code write dot inner HTML, and we'll set it to color. So that will allow our color to be displayed here in its hex code, whatever is generated here. All right, and now we want our hex code write to be the same color as well. What will we do? If you have a clue, you can pause the video. Otherwise, let's continue following on. So hex code write, what are we changing? We are changing the style of it, right? So we go hex code write style, and then we want to change our color of it. And we are changing it to our color variable. Right, so that's that. From there, we will console.log. This is just for purposes for us to see that the function is working. We want to console.log our box to make sure we are creating a box. We also want to return our box out of here because we're going to use it in another function later. And for now, we'll just call our create box function just to see. Yes, it is working. As we can see, we have our color box over here. All right, so as we can see, we've generated one color, and we've created one color box. But we want 5 of them to be displayed over here. And for that to happen, we'll have to create another function. And this function, what we are going to call it is color palette. And the reason I've called it color palette is because it's the place in where we want it to be shown. where we want these color boxes to be shown is in our color palette. So what we do then is we have to define our variable. So constant, we can call it color palette, and we've got to get it from our HTML document. So document.getElementById, and what we are getting is we are getting our color palette. Excuse me, color palette. All right. From there, just like with our hex code, we wanted to be able to manipulate our HTML document to have it all over here. So we want our 5 boxes printed over here. So what we would do is we would take our color palette, and that's the place where we are working with, and we would say .innerHTML again, and we'll set it to an empty string. Right, so that gives us access to this place over here where we want our boxes to be. Right, so now here's a little challenge. How would we generate 5 different boxes? All right, remember we generated a hex code, 6 digits. How would we generate 5 different boxes? So either try it on your own, or here is how we would do it. We would again create a for loop, right? And we want to say when we want to equal I to 0 firstly, because that is the first part of our loop. That's our starting point, is 0. So when I is less than 5, because we want 5 boxes, we want our loop to continue. All right, so it continues and continues and continues 5 times. And what do we want to happen, right? We want to generate 5 colors. We want to generate 5 boxes. Okay, so how we would do that is we will create another variable, const color, all right, and it will equal our function, generate random color. From there, we will also we get our box, so const box, and what does that do? That will create the box. Remember, we are going to make sure that it's done 5 times, and we want our box to take our color, so we can pass the color here. And now we want it to be able to take this place over here in our color palette. So what do? We take our color palette and we use the function append child. Alright, and what are we appending? We're appending our box. We want our box to be over here. And this loop will continue 5 times, alright, and that will generate our 5 boxes. Let's over here, let's call the function just so we can see it, color palette, and let's see if it worked. Yes, we can see that it did work, and we can see that we got our color box and all of our hex codes joined to it. Alright, so actually we can actually get rid of these now since we got our function called, right? Because it's generating in here anyways, in this function. So we can see, yeah, our program works. If we click the button, we can see the background changes and we get our hex code over here. All right, so everything seems to be working. Well done. Right, our last thing is we can't generate a new palette. So how we would do that is firstly, we would have to call our variable from our HTML document, which is generate button. So how we do that is, we create a variable called generate button. We can call it generate button, and we can say document. We're getting it from our HTML document, get element by ID, and it is our generate button. All right. From there, we want that when we click on the generate button, we get a whole new list of boxes. Sorry, English isn't my best friend today. So we get a whole new list of boxes over here. So how we would do that is we would then take our generate button and we will add an event listener, right? And what are we listening for? We are listening for a click. And when we click it, we want our boxes, all 5 boxes, to change. So how we do that is we pass our color palette function. And over here, we can see, yes, that all works. And we can change the colors perfectly. All right, guys, thank you very much for joining us on this challenge today. Next up, we'll be learning more about nav bars and all of that. So please do join us. Thank you for joining us today, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.